Hello, welcome to 15-Minute Consulting Best Practices. My name is Maria Isabel Rios, and I'm joined by David A. Fields. Hello, David.
Hello, Maria Isabel. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Welcome to the space where we answer your questions about how to create more success, more traction, more delight for you and for your clients in your consulting firm. Hello, John. Hello, Crystal. Hello, Michael. You all know the drill. And for those of you who are new, it takes us a minute to see your questions. Ask us questions. This is how this space becomes valuable for every one of you. Also, chime into the conversation. We want to know what is on your mind, what will be valuable for you all today. And to get started, we're going to dive right into a question that I think was pending from last week, where we had the pleasure of having Bob Ward joining us. So, Jaren, if you can please share the question that was left over from last week, I think. Okay, question is for you, David. Todd says, I just finished your book. Good, Todd. Loved it. Even better, my question, is there anything you'd revise or update between its 2017 publication and now? All right.
Yeah, I remember. So I remember that, a really the best consultant would go back and read the book. So Todd, and probably many of you've actually read the book more recently than I have. But I will give you some thoughts that if I were going to update the book or make some changes for heading into 2026, what would I change? If I were to rewrite the book, or if I had known then what I know now, I would actually change trade associations, which is one of the 5 marketing musts, to collaborators, with trade associations just being the most obvious, easiest, best example of a collaborator. But there are other collaborators whose tribes you can borrow. So I might make that change. In 2017 and 16 and 15, when I wrote the book, the Zoom wasn't as big a thing, and Teams and this kind of interaction. Phone was still a big deal. So I obviously wouldn't focus as much on phone now, though we have a couple of clients that still absolutely prioritize good old-fashioned phone calls, and it works for them. But people by and large do communicate a little differently now. Either way, ultimately, you're trying to get to a live conversation. So that wouldn't change. It's just the vehicle I would probably change a little bit. What else would I do? I'd add 111 messaging and our ghosting sequence, both of which are technologies and techniques that we've advanced since that book came out. What else? Probably the role of the BD administrator has become much more important. And using AI to supplement that position so that position can do even more for you. I would probably add emphasis on that, because I don't recall that I put much of that in the book. I think we've updated our proposal format, so I would probably change that a little bit. And I think the book really, on purpose, tries to focus you on making your proposals right side up, which is still 100% the same. I might lighten some of the de-emphasis on talking about your firm, because you can put that kind of stuff in the appendix. That's what strikes me off the top of my head. Maria Isabel, you probably read the book more recently than me also. Are there other things that need to change?
Everything you mentioned, it's also consistent with the way we approach our work with our clients, with what people to put into practice. And everything you mentioned is high value added and helps people gain traction very fast. So very pointed edits, David. So I'm sure I appreciate it. Todd will appreciate them as well. So Todd, if you're listening, let us know. Hopefully you're taking notes. And for everybody else, these are your notes, right? This is the book update in a
So Maria, that said, if for those of you who are listening, you've probably read the book more recently than I have. If you think there are things that should change, type in your comments. I think I would love to hear, and other folks would like to hear. And hi, John and Dan and Crystal, who's new. That's amazing. And hi, Chris. I will consider myself one of the kids.
Yes, Chris made my day.
All right. But let's do. Any questions coming in from the
right?
No questions coming in. So yeah, ask your questions. In the meantime, Jaren, I think we had at least one more left over from last week. Oh, here you go. Here you go, Maria Isabel. How can I leverage AI for consulting? From Dennis. A nice, simple, narrow topic.
Right.
What's
Only
your
that. All right, Dennis. Smart question to ask, right? Just that. All right. How can you leverage AI? So many opportunities, so many ways, and something you should not overlook, right, in your work. Not anymore. Integrate it into your day-to-day, particularly as a growing firm, as a boutique firm. Unquestionable that AI should be part of your work. When I think, or when we think, so I'm going to give you a general answer to your general question, because this is, after all, 15-minute consulting best practice. This is not 5 hours or something like that. But when I think about AI and how to leverage it, I go back to our 4-part consulting firm model. And for those of you who are new or haven't heard us talk about it before, it starts with winning engagements, which ties really closely with profitably creating value. And those two basically create a winning cycle of energy, right? Create all the energy, all the motion for your firm. You win engagement, so you profitably create value in your delivery, which gives you the ability to win more engagement, create more value. With more engagements, create more value. You support that with infrastructure, which is the 3rd component, and you wrap it around strategy, which is the 4th component. I would take the 4 components and look at each one of them. Where will AI contribute the most value for you and for your firm along each one of those components? Think about efficiency, think about quality, think about speed as one form of efficiency, but not the only one, right? And then once you have it mapped out, prioritize. What gets you where you want to be faster, right? That's where I would think about AI and leveraging AI for your firm. So your answer, Dennis, might be different than Todd's answer, right? Who asked the question from before, or Crystal or Michael's or John or Daniel who are here, right? Everybody's going to land in a different place depending on where you are on winning engagements, profitably creating value, your infrastructure, and your strategy. But think along those 4 lines. David, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I agree with you. This is sort of like, how do I use AI in consulting is kind of a big question, and obviously we have entire projects oriented towards answering this question for our clients. I think the only thing, so I agree 100%. Those 4 pieces you mentioned are the right 4 pieces, and that's what we also look at for our clients. The other, I think, layer I would add then on top of that is to think of each of those 4 pieces from an internal and external perspective. So, for instance, winning engagements, how do we use AI to make ourselves more efficient, make ourselves faster? And then that's internal. Externally, how do we use AI to improve the way our business development efforts appear to clients? How quickly they receive it? How do we improve the client experience? And the same thing with profitably creating value. There's a lot of focus right now on how do I save time? How do I use AI to cut costs? Which is, I think, missing probably 70% of the value, which is how do we use AI to enhance what we do for clients, to make our deliverables better? And that, by the way, is how you make sure you do not get replaced.
Right, exactly.
That's probably what I would do.
And that's where I also think the juxtaposition with like the strategic component comes into play, right? There's a very tactical application along all of those, but there's also into your strategy, how do you leverage AI into your strategy? And Todd, don't worry, the session lives recorded on LinkedIn Live. So when you watch it, let us know if we answer your question. If not, shoot us an email, right? Or send us a LinkedIn message, and then we'll gather it. Christine, you have a question? I'm going to ask David to answer first. So, Christine asks, you mentioned expanding the book to focus on collaborators.
Yeah.
What are some of the other collaborators you consider important beyond trade associations? Okay, so let's double click on collaborators. Who are potential collaborators?
And that's a good follow-up question. So a collaborator is anyone whose tribe includes or overlaps with your prospects. meaning folks who are decision makers that could buy the type of work that you want to sell, that are experiencing the type of problem that your consulting practice solves. So trade associations are an obvious example of that, and they're a really good example of that because they have big tribes that ideally are focused on, where you play, industry-wise, perhaps functionally. But there are other folks who have tribes. Data providers are great collaborators because data providers are selling their data to the same sort of folks that you could solve problems for. And data providers need a way to make their data sticky. If they're selling millions and millions of dollars per year on data and it goes away, that's a big loss for them. Having a consultant play a role of making that data be used well is an obvious win for everybody. Similarly, software providers or SaaS providers will often need a way to make their product be used well, or else they'll lose that monthly recurring revenue or annual recurring revenue. So their tribe often overlaps with your clients. Those are good. Headhunters are a classic, executive recruiters are a classic collaborator. I mean, they're all sorts of folks that are adjacent to you that have a tribe. So that's off the top of my head, some initial starters.
Right. And okay. Christine, let us know if that helps. There are some collaborators that are vertical specific and industry specific, right? Yep. So for some folks, marketing firms or agencies are Absolutely. Very good collaborators because their work is adjacent, or for some folks, operators of some sort or distributors of some sort are Yep. also excellent collaborators because they're adjacent to the consulting space where they live in. So think also, if you go up the chain or right adjacent to the work you're doing, who else is touching your clients? Who would sit across the desk from the same decision makers that you could speak with? All right.
I think there's another question that from last week. I want to make sure that was my recollection. So, right. And I see there's a question, there are a couple questions that came up. So we'll get them next week so we can answer last week's question today. If there is one. Jaren, if there is one, will you pop it up?
Yes, Jaren is saying yes. Okay. So this question is from Donovan. Donovan says, any idea why so many leaders are comfortable getting financial advice from commissioned salespeople, meaning brokers, about how to maximize one of their largest corporate investments, healthcare? What do you think? Why do people go to brokers for healthcare?
Well, look, I mean, I think that salespeople in general, brokers, whatever you want to call them, have been a legitimate source of information for a lot of years in a lot of industries. In pharma has for years done this in service of the goal of increasing prescriptions, right? They bring research studies to physicians that support their compound or medicine or whatever. And that research would be very difficult for a physician to surface on their own. So smart physicians listen to that information. They appreciate having that information. And of course, they recognize that the research had a sponsor and so has some bias, and they take it with a grain of salt. They look at, is it legit research or not? And I think the same thing applies to other industries. Salespeople can be an excellent source of information. And most of us realize that. And right. We realize we have to be cognizant of the source of information and not use it, unchallenged. So I guess I think that's probably why, as consultants, we can bring in even more information unbiased. What do you think, Maria Isabel?
Yeah, I think it's all about expertise. And a lot of people say, well, if I don't get this level of expertise or this level of access to knowledge about options from a broker, where else would I get it? The same way, quite a bit of clients are looking for the highest level of expertise possible when they hire you. I think that same thinking applies here. And until their expertise or that knowledge is more publicly available, then there will always be a role.
Yeah, I think so. That makes sense. All right, there's a few questions we're going to get to next week around collaborators and rise and rise of attention deficit. So we will get to all of that next week, but we've hit the bottom of our 15 minutes. So amazing. So thank you for spending this time with us. Surprisingly, perhaps to me, but maybe not to other folks, some folks who are here may not have read this book yet. And a lot of what we talk about during these Monday Q&As are based on the concepts in this book. So if you haven't read it, go nuts, spend $15 on your practice and get that. If it's on your shelf somewhere, like it's on mine, read it again. So that also, please connect to Maria Isabel and to me. Thank you, Jaren, putting our connection things down there, because we want to be connected with you. And if you don't receive the articles every week, this was another surprise. There are many folks who think, oh, that book, I'm pointing over my shoulder where the book is, that's everything. No, there is so much IP that we give and information we give every single week. So if you're not subscribed, subscribe. And there you go. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a fabulous week. As always, remember, consulting is about them. It's about your clients and your prospects. So give them value and give them kindness. And we will see you next week. Take care, all.
Bye, thanks.